We will, we will unshock you. This is Unshocked.
And this White House aide was saying, well, he was just presenting alternative facts.
Hi there, this is Reggie. If this is your first time listening or watching our podcast on Spotify or YouTube, then prepare to lose yourself for the next hour or, well, maybe the next hour and 30 minutes or so. But if you're a return visitor and you've seen our other episodes before, then yep, we do know that each episode takes a long time to finish, but explanations to be reserved for later. The less preamble, the better. So, on with the program.
Hey everybody. Hey Nathan.
Hello.
Yep, that's Nathan. I'm Reggie, and this is episode 9 on the second season of Unshocked. Maybe one of the few programs that really just celebrate our differences. And we always say that our differences make our lives better. Yeah, we're all different, we're all unique. So yeah, in a way we're similar.
I think you just summed it up. Deep down inside, I kind of feel in many respects we are all the same. But what is it? I think in Asian countries, there's a saying, same, but different. And I guess that kind of sums up the human race.
I'm just not sure about what country it came from, but
I saw it printed on T-shirts when I travelled to Cambodia or Thailand quite a few years ago now. And I didn't buy a T-shirt, but I wished I had have.
Again, I'm Reggie. I'm from the Philippines, and yeah, Nathan, he's from Australia, and I hope you've been following our other episodes. Yeah, today, Nathan, we're on our second deep dive into American culture, and I hope the audience also checks this out. Our episode 8 was about how America suddenly became unfriendly to other nations. So we asked the question in episode 8, why should we non-Americans still be friendly to Americans when they don't seem friendly to each other? They don't seem friendly to the whole world. And it was a wonderful discussion. I'm glad that we had that with our good friend John Marshall Cheery. He's a New Yorker. Yeah, let me just play a bit of his introduction that we had when we first interviewed him.
Hi, John. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Reggie.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing to be our guest.
It's my pleasure.
So, can you tell the audience more about yourself?
So, yeah, my name is John Cheery. I run a company called John Marshall Media, and we produce audiobooks for the major publishers, as well as podcasts and some other types of audio programs.
Full disclosure, I do work with John on his projects.
Okay, for this episode, we're gonna talk about what's true and what's not in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
In America, they have this discussion about fake news, alternative facts. I mean, as an Australian, Nathan, what have you gleaned from their discussions over there about that?
Yes, well, I do recall when the current president was elected the first time around, and one of his White House aides was talking to a journalist, and the journalist was saying, how unpopular he is, and not many people attended the inauguration, and other things that he was saying that were pretty obviously not true. And this White House aide was saying, well, he was just presenting alternative facts. Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember who it was, and it was several years ago now. But I do remember her saying that I can't recall her name, but she did say that he was just presenting alternative facts, and the journalist was saying, "Well, facts are facts. There's no such thing as alternative facts."
It's good to break this down with John again.
Hmm.
It's nice to hear from someone in New York because it has been previously built up as the center of information, right?
It's definitely a world city.
Even in terms of news media, you're gonna hear later that the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have built themselves as veritable sources of factual information. This time around, both of us interviewed John, and
Yes.
it was a very great conversation. So let's switch over to how we started that interview.
John, we really appreciate you showing up for this go around. And can you at least describe in a way your placement or your circumstances within American media? American media is so big. You have everything there. Newspapers. Every state has its own TV station, and New York is the center of book publishing all over the
It
world.
is.
Whenever someone has a book, it's probably from New York. So somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
I had to
Mm.
ask him what position he feels he occupies within the infrastructure of American media, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you feel the same way I do, but because I'm a Filipino, we're a third world country. We really
Mm-hmm.
don't have that many forms of media that we can access over here, right? I mean,
Okay.
we have books, we have television, we have the internet, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really different over in a place like the U.S. or New York, because I mean, even in Australia, right? Every suburb has its own newspaper.
Well, it's not maybe not every suburb, but most major cities do.
Mhm.
I would say it's probably not as large as the United States. The United States has a larger population than Australia, but yes, we do have our own media, and small as it is, and even some regional towns will have their own
Yes.
smaller newspapers. So
Mhm.
it is quite large over here.
You just worked in a sports program that's
That's correct. Yeah, my main job is to be a disability support worker, but I also have a second job on Saturday where I film sports matches, mostly rugby union matches at the moment, for a company that streams them to clients on their web portal. I think they stream them to various bars, so people can go and watch their favourite sporting team play rugby.
but you
No,
still occupy a space, in
that's
media.
correct.
It's
That's correct. Yeah, and it's a smaller space, but
but it's there. Mhm.
nevertheless, it's there, and there's a market for it. So
So I also had to ask John, right? He works in audiobooks, and it's
yes,
also part of the media space.
yes,
So we,
Yeah.
John Marshall Media is my company, and we produce audiobooks. Publishers come to us to get their audiobooks made well. If we have a place in media, then that is the place that we are. And we don't editorialize, our content, meaning that we don't choose what books that we take or what books that we do not take in general. There have been books that we have refused to take for a variety of reasons that just somehow operated completely outside of any sense of integrity. But that's only been like I can only think of like 2 or 3 examples in my 20 or my 30 years of doing this.
What comes to my mind is like you're like part of a medical team who takes all patients. You're not necessarily going to screen out patients just because you don't like what they believe in, or
First off, we're a business, right? But I do believe in, the free speech, idea of American politics. There's a lot of very beautiful things in the foundation of America, right? And one of those things is the right to free speech. One of the things is for me to understand, for me to have the humility to think that maybe the idea that I have is damn well probably wrong. So for me to then look at a book or whatever and say, well, this is just a lie, do I know that it's a lie? Well, I don't really know. I How am I going to check that? I don't really know. We do, thousands of books a year. We would not have the time to do that, the resources to do it, and I think it would be irresponsible to then make ourselves a decider. There are organizations that say that they do that. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, just as an example, that is their stock and trade. That is what they say that they do.
Like you, Nathan, you don't
Mm.
really pay attention if what you're broadcasting is the actual truth or not. Right? It's
That's exactly right. I'm just there operating the camera and filming what's going on the field. It's not a drama where things are written and people are acting it out. So
I just had to make that point because both in Australia and the US, you have this presumption somehow that things can't be manipulated easily. You don't necessarily think that something you read can be easily manipulated. But to my point, that there are some countries where information, what goes through media is actively manipulated.
yes.
And this is where
Mhm.
where I mentioned that particular
Mhm.
fact.
I just have to make some distinctions when it comes to media in Australia and in the US because there are many parts of the world, North Korea, where media is really heavily censored. It's like there was a time in the Philippines when that was exactly the case. They call it the era of the dictatorship during the 70s and the 80s when all newspapers and radio personalities and television personalities were supposed to go along with what the government wanted them to say, because if they didn't, they'd get detained. Some of them were tortured, some of them were killed. It's a common story in many other repressive regimes.
I mean, even in Australia, you never had to think that what you saw on TV was
No,
manipulated by the government, right?
we have a free press here, which means that media workers, go about their business unencumbered by people trying to stop them, essentially.
Yeah.
If they disagree with the government, they're allowed to voice it, and they do. That does happen.
In my personal experience, having lived through part of a very repressive regime, I can tell you this sounds funny to me. I'm not sure it's going to be funny to everyone else, but because it's a bit morbid. If you recall, during the assassination of JFK, yeah, it really looked terrible. And during that time, everybody saw a shooting. At the same time, everybody really didn't know who the shooter was, but
Yeah.
they're saying that a shadow government might have manipulated everything.
Yeah, it's sort of a conspiracy theory,
I find
which
it
are
hard to
very
believe.
popular these days, and
Yeah.
even with the freedom of press, that can still go on. And I guess maybe that's one of the issues of having free speech is that people can say anything they want, and many people do. And it's obviously not true, but it's still allowed to say it. So.
Here in the Philippines, you also had an assassination that happened right in front of many cameras. It was 1983, and during 1983, there was a guy called Ninoy Aquino who arrived in the Philippines, and he was like the public adversary or the nemesis of the dictator during that time. And there were many cameras trained on the airplane tarmac, or actually on the airplane upon his return, and he was also shot. Yeah, he was shot on top of the stairs going down from the airplane, and that was an instance where there was actually a lot of government manipulation to obscure the identity of the shooter. Right? I mean, that was one thing I could really argue that that there was the hand of government there to obscure what really happened. So there was a real conspiracy there, as opposed to what JFK.
Well, hello again. I'm so glad you've made it this far. If you're a first time listener or viewer, tremendous, tremendous thanks. If you've seen our other episodes before, yes, a short explanation on why each one takes a while to do. We're a very, very small operation. We have our day jobs. But most importantly, we try to make sure that each and every episode is like the bestest, the most excellent of handcrafted pieces of jewelry from only the most arduous of experts that will be the most tremendously eye-opening and most fulfilling content you will see anywhere in the world. So I know I'm just blowing things up a bit, but if you've enjoyed yourself so far, then I know we've done a great job. The less interruptions, the better. So on with the program.
You probably heard about it's more popular, I think, as an Asian cultural thing. I'm pretty sure it's just not an Asian cultural thing, but it is a popular discussion point that in majority of Asian cultures, the concept of saving face is
Yes,
very
I'm
important.
very aware of that. I've heard of it. I mean, it's mostly an Asian thing. I guess it does exist a little bit in Western cultures sometimes. I mean, nobody likes to look like a fool, and nobody likes
Yes.
to look stupid in front of others. So I guess
Mhm.
in that sense, we all like to save face a little bit. But yeah, in terms of saving face in Asian cultures, I guess I don't really know how to explain it or
Yeah, I
or
understand.
even why it exists. But I know that families and social structures are very important there. Whereas in Australia, I think we're brought up to be much more individualistic, and I guess we express ourselves differently because of that.
Well, I'm an Asian, so
Yes.
I can say that I have seen the difference between how people treat information about, maybe you could say, objectionable stuff about your own identity or your own
Yeah.
habits.
Okay. Yes, I understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a difference of how it's treated among people from my part of the world, and
Yes.
how I see it treated in Western media. This can be very important too. My point is, you don't take freedom of information for granted. Y-
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Well, we don't realize what we have here
yeah.
until
Yeah.
unless there was a time when we lose that. Well, then we certainly will feel that loss.
The freedom that you enjoy, it just is more apparent when you have a 24-hour news cycle. And I know that in Australia you have ABC News
Mhm.
that runs for 24 hours, I think.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
ABC News is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation,
correct.
which was patterned after, I'm not sure, the British Broadcasting Corporation.
The BBC, more or less, I guess. Yes, you could say that.
I was born during 1976.
Hmm.
And at that time, there were no 24-hour news cycles at that time. But
Mm.
I could argue that the BBC and the ABC were already operating at that time.
They were. I don't think that they were 24 hours.
Yes,
I don't
right?
think at least the actual news itself,
Mhm.
having like a separate news channel running 24 hours, that wasn't happening then.
Yeah, it is now, right?
Mm.
Same with
Yep.
Al Jazeera and
Yes.
Channel News Asia. But
Yes.
everything started with actually with CNN, and
Yes. Yep.
it was America who
Mm.
pioneered 24-hour news cycle. So I really had to ask John about it.
John, can I ask you? You have CNN, the first time in the history of media that did the 24-hour coverage. Do you think that's an achievement worth considering as the bar for others to follow?
If you're talking specifically about CNN, like 24-hour news coverage, my feeling on that, and again, this is not super well researched. My feeling on the 24-hour news channels is probably not a good thing because they've got to fill up so much content when in fact news cycles really are not that fast. Like I remember I went through a point, I don't know how many years ago, when I just got completely obsessed with like news. I don't know when it was, and I was just watching, CNN and whatever all the time. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is probably not healthy. And so I stopped. And then I would like, check the news like once every couple of days. And I realized that, wait, nothing actually changed. But in the meantime, there's all these guys talking about the things that maybe or maybe didn't happen. That's not original to me. I didn't make up that idea that maybe the 24-hour news cycle is a bad thing, but I think it does lend toward this sensationalizing of everything, right? One decision, and they start to pick everything apart, and then everything becomes huge when just some things just are just simple. And I think that can be very dangerous for sure.
I think John made a very good point about not necessarily what I would call fake news, but with the pressure of having to produce that, I'm sure they do make mistakes. And they even try to, I guess, make things a little bit more sensational, make things a little bit more dramatic, pushing the boundaries a little bit, I think, to, make money essentially.
When I think about it, that's exactly social media, right? Social media is 24-hour news. I mean, Facebook even calls its first innovation the news feed.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
That's a good point, actually.
It's just all about news about your friends, right?
Is it still called the news feed or they changed it? I can't remember.
I think they changed it eventually.
Because it makes sense because, I mean, just talking about yourself 24/7 isn't really news.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
it probably is news to some people, but not to the people watching or listening.
but
some
it's
people think they're newsworthy when they're actually not.
Yeah, but there was a time when that was the
Yes, I
the
remember.
principle, taking off, making it possible for Facebook to become popular. It's the same draw as CNN's 24-hour news cycle, right? You get
that's a good point. I didn't think about that, but and much more problematic because when you have a 24-hour social media news feed in inverted
Yeah.
commas, it means everybody is producing news, again in inverted commas, but it's not based on facts at all. So some people just believe it is, or they make out like it is, and
just to
as John said, that kind of
right eyes,
exactly right. It's attention. It's for attention-seeking people.
This is one part of maybe it's specifically sort of like American culture that was exported. 24 hours, you have access to some kind of information that's supposed to be interesting.
John just made a point too that doesn't really make the 24 news hour cycle favorable.
Yes.
But I had to ask him about journalistic standards because everybody is in on it now. It's like if you're not on a 24 news cycle, you're probably gonna be left behind somehow.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So every channel has to do it.
right? Does that mean that America still set the bar?
Okay, so you have some reservations about what CNN did.
The concept.
Yes,
Yeah.
the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, do you feel that in terms of the quality of media, America ranks among the top?
I don't know the answer to that question. Certainly, I believe there was a golden age. I certainly hate to get it to buy into that whole how things used to be great in the past, the whole nostalgia. I hate to buy into that, but I do feel that there was a time when journalism, right, in America was the standard seemed very high, right, and things it did feel that way, and I think there are residuals that still exists in places like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, perhaps, or these certain organizations who I believe that they feel they're doing their best and they're balancing national security interests, right? These types of things.
It's fascinating because the concept of news being accessible sometimes gets taken for granted. Because let me just give an example. Recently, both in Australia and the U.S., there were exposés about clerical abuse of minors,
Yes, sure. Yes.
schools, and other
Terrible
institutions.
Yep.
And I
Lots of
guess
coverage.
both.
One particular journalist who was very active in that space, which started the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse, actually came from my hometown. So, and there were a lot of other journalists, of course, in Australia that were, fighting the good fight, as it were, in exposing that as well. But yeah, it sort of got a bit of a start here in my hometown in Newcastle.
I keep trying to contrast it with the situation in my country, where if there were members of the clergy who may have been transgressive over here, it would be
Mm.
infinitely harder to report on them, even if you were,
Yes.
a seasoned reporter, because
Mm.
the influence of the religious groups here are so great. So
Yes.
it would really take 10 times the mountain you have to climb.
Mm.
A big mountain to climb was a great way to
Mm.
put it, I think, right? Because they're
Mm.
fighting the powers that don't want it to, and that is really that's the ultimate beauty of finding truth, right? And that's to me, like, truth is, like, it's so important, right? And it's so hard to find when especially as an organization as powerful as the Catholic Church. I mean, that's pretty amazing to be able to do that. And I'm very, very happy that political systems like in America and Australia do support that sort of truth finding against power, right? And that's why it's so important in countries like Nathan's and in mine to have that free speech, that protection, right? Legal protections.
Exactly the right way to put it.
You did chime in that in Australia, the investigation into that particularly gnarly case,
Yes.
did in your hometown. Would you be familiar with why someone from your hometown would be courageous enough to at least, take a look?
I can only speculate as to what her motivations were to pursue that story, but I guess she found out that something was going on, or spoke to someone who either been a victim or something, and started to investigate, and it just grew from there. But yeah, I
Yeah,
can't.
I just wanted to express my admiration for that
Mm.
because, like I keep saying, it's harder for Filipinos to do that. It's not just about clerical abuse. No, it's about a lot of other things.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe the rest of the audience would find it more familiar when they hear about the journalists in Mexico reporting against the cartels.
Yes.
If you're a
Yes.
reporter in Mexico and yeah, you wanna shed light on what the cartels are doing there, that's a
Even
point where
members in your close family could be killed. So
liberal presses are inspirational to other presses around the world. I know journalists here who admire and study the free press in other countries. Me personally, I feel sad that
Some actors will actually use that privilege, I could say, to become echo chambers to certain sectors of society. You have a sector of society that's maybe racist, I could say. Maybe there's a sector of that, and
yes,
some
yes,
some
it exists. Yep.
some news providers or social media content creators who want to use that same legroom
Yes,
to
absolutely.
speak
Yeah.
to that crowd. Yeah. But at the same time, if you don't have that legroom, when COVID-19 first emerged in China, there was an information lockdown, so there was no legroom there. The truth came out in such subversive methods. The mainstream
Yeah.
media in China never initially confirmed the presence of the disease. It was only the subversive media who first delivered that news in other places.
It's really interesting that you say that, because what you're talking about tends to be a bit of a reversal of the order, whereas in this particular case, it's the social media, the ordinary citizen that is actually, I guess, the one that is producing the facts. So yeah, absolutely. It's a confusing world when you have these things going on. It's like, who can you trust? But then in Australia, it's like a lot of those forms of alternate media are less trustworthy, aren't trustworthy themselves, and it's like
Yeah,
in
there's
a
no
lot of
cut and
cases,
dried.
yeah, it's very grey.
yeah, and I had to also ask John about that because he still trusts a lot of the mainstream news gathering sources in New York. He does still retain a bit of it, but sometime during 2016, maybe around that period, for Americans, the trust they place in those same news sources
Mm-hmm.
it somehow got eroded. So
Yes.
I had to ask him, what was his experience with that?
John, the issue of fake news suddenly became big during 2016. Well, that's what I remembered. Can you tell us a bit about what you could remember about that issue?
I don't have a lot to share, honestly. I honestly, the way I consume media, like I really try to keep myself at a distance. I'm a Wall Street Journal subscriber. It's the only piece of news that I subscribe to. The reason why is because I think in general I tend to lean a little bit more liberal, and the Wall Street Journal I think is considered to be more conservative in its political approach. And for that reason, that's why I do it, to kind of go against type, right? I don't want to be fed things that I already instinctively believe. That just is very dangerous to me. And so I tend to do that. I like the Wall Street Journal because they'll talk about how this policy is a great policy, and then the next article will be about how whatever this policy is a terrible policy. So I try to limit my media consumption, Reggie, and so for that reason I can't really comment on that. I was aware of that happening. It's horrifying. I have children, and since I've had children, my God, my empathy towards children has just gone crazy. And since this is not something that I have influence over, I do not need to dive too deeply into something so horrible as that.
But you do agree that it was a time when you had to question whether the truth was really being taken care of.
But I think that's super important. Is every time I read something, I always try to say, really? That doesn't sound right. Right? And then try to drill into it from the opposite perspective. And I think that's why I've had success in business, because every project I've ever been involved in, we will say, do it this way. I'm like, really? It can get you into problems, but it is also a way to find a truth or a better process or something like that, right? It's a scientific perspective. And I think that's important. I think that if a lot of people, read the news, read what they see on social media with just asking a few more questions, then there wouldn't be all this acceptance of things that are fake news, that are just obviously just total bullshit. I think people would be less inclined to believe things that are just freaking stupid.
But John makes a point of, this idea of questioning everything. I think it's healthy to be a little bit skeptical, particularly these days, on every kind of media. As he said, like when he was talking about the Wall Street Journal, and he sort of likes to read it because it's actually not his typical political views. It presents things to him that he wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards. And social media is notorious for this, for kind of the algorithms where it keeps spitting things out that you want to see and want to hear. But just because it's something you like and you want to hear doesn't necessarily mean it's always right, that it's always factual. So
It's there, right?
yeah.
That's part of what John has to deal with.
But is it something that Americans themselves don't like to talk about? Is it a taboo subject?
It's like the subject of fake news is not something Americans would like to tackle. Is it a topic that you feel
It's
that
not that I'd rather
welcome?
not. I mean, one of the things that the way it appears to me, because again, I keep myself pretty far out of this, Reggie, but the way that things appear to me is that a lot of people are getting their news sources from places that are not supposed to be news, right? And so from what I can tell, most of the fake news is being spread by people on I don't know, Facebook or whatever, who are probably not being paid to do news. Right. So it's funny that like organizations who get paid to do the news, right? Like, the Journal and the Times, for example, tend to generally have a better hit rate, a better truth success rate, because they've made it their business to do this, right? They built a system around it, right, that supports that, right? A professional system. And they're not 100%. Nothing can be. But then you get like the guys who are sitting in their, we always had the images of somebody sitting in their pajamas in their basement doing nothing better with their time except for like, making up things about Hillary Clinton, like abusing children underneath a pizza restaurant or something. That's just dumb.
Yeah, I remember that one. somebody out there went and shot up a building or something. I don't know if it was the actual pizza restaurant or something, but it was, or it could have
Yeah.
actually been, the Hillary Clinton's campaign building or something, because he apparently believed it. But it's just, yeah.
There's a philosophical idea in certain parts of Buddhism that truth is sort of the underlying almost fabric of all things that exist, right?
Mm.
And one of the concepts is that whenever things are out of balance with truth, that makes us agitated,
Yes.
right? When we believe something that's not true, it tends to make us angry. I'm delving into an area of philosophy that I understand only slightly, and again, I want to be careful about being truthful myself. But these are the things that I understand about this philosophy that I've been studying. That's why truth is so important to me.
You heard about the Pizzagate?
I remember seeing it on the news. This guy actually went and shot up the building because he truly believed that Hillary Clinton was running this operation
And
in
you're
the
all,
basement.
all the way over there in Australia. I mean,
Yeah, it was, and it's like,
yeah, because right now, we like to talk about pieces of information that people react to coming from social media.
Mhm.
But I also remember in my own home country, this was during the 1960s, I guess, or 1970s, way before social media. It just so happened that a satellite was supposed to have launched into outer space, a satellite from the U.S. And I don't know, they call it Skylab. I'm not sure if that's yeah, it was a space station launched by NASA in 1973. Um, During that time, some sort of kooky religious leader in the Philippines predicted that it was written somewhere in the Bible that Skylab was going to fall on the Philippines, fall from the sky. Yeah.
Mhm.
And a lot of people actually believed it.
Mhm.
So they sold their properties
Mhm.
because it was like an Armageddon for them, instead of having to suffer through the loss of your property because Skylab or some other foreign body from the sky is going to fall on your land. It was better for you to sell your land and live off the earnings that you got from the sale.
In a sense, fake news has been around for a long time. There's things reported incorrectly. It's actually not something really all that new when you really think back on it.
It's just disheartening to see that this happens in places like the US where they're supposed to be bastions of the truth.
Mhm.
Because as a person who had an experience with a repressive regime,
Yes,
you don't automatically believe the news.
and that was the mainstream news. Yeah.
Yeah, there was always a side to you that said, "Wait a minute, you know, this is what they're saying, but you know that things are different on the ground."
So you really always knew that what was being reported was not true then.
It was a case of being aware that local news sources here
Mm-hmm.
were not always trustworthy, and then
Yes,
you had to look for news sources abroad.
I understand. Yes,
Maybe they're saying the truth, but I need to hear it from a third party too.
yes, to
But
verify.
yeah,
Yeah.
so moving on with John, I asked him how would he distinguish what he feels is factual from what's not. So
Well, it's is it true or is it not true? Is this the simple answer to that, right? Is it true or is it not true? So I don't, that's the answer to that question. How do we identify it? Well, that's a problem because we can't always we none of us have the time or not, we don't have the time and the resources to delve into everything that we possibly read. We can't do it, which is one of the reasons why I limit my sources of news, of information. It's one of the reasons why one of my big failings as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is my lack of social media acumen. I'm really bad at it. And it's because I don't like reading it. It's just, I don't, what are you guys talking about? It's not interesting to me. It doesn't affect my life. So I try to make sure that I'm only getting things that are accurate and that are pertinent to my life, because there's too much out there, man.
Well, hello again. I'm so glad you've made it this far. If you're a first time listener or viewer, tremendous thanks. If you've seen our other episodes before, yes, a short explanation on why each one takes a while to do. We're a very small operation. We have our day jobs. But if you've enjoyed yourself so far, then I know we've done a great job. The less interruptions, the better. So on with the program.
He makes a very good point in saying that there's a lot of noise out there. If you were looking at every news source you could possibly get your hands on or watch or read, then you'd do nothing else.
Yeah, it's something that you have to wrestle with. But I can only imagine kids who are always on their phones and they're always
Yes.
receiving all sorts of news that's not necessarily about politics or
I'm so glad I didn't have to grow up with social media, and it didn't really become a thing until I was an adult.
it's because of the media space. Yeah, because the media space is crowding all around us
Yes.
today. It's in your phone. It's in billboards. It's in even if you're not picking up a newspaper, you're seeing something on your phone. Yeah, it can be overwhelming. And I don't know with Australians, but here in the Philippines, we're very vulnerable to Western influence.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm not sure if it's just the Philippines. I think that a lot of people around the world also put the Western media on a pedestal, even if I don't know, even if some of it could be harmful. Yeah, like
Yes.
and
Yeah, absolutely.
and anything new, something that would keep your eyes on your screen
Hmm.
can include sensational news, right?
Yes.
News that even if it's wrong, it's patently false, but
Yes.
brings your eyes there, right?
Yes.
Social media is mainstream media. That's what it appears to me.
Mhm.
When you say MSM, it includes social media because social media is something that everybody sees. So
Mhm.
anyway, we were asking John about because particularly in the United States, right? They call mainstream media MSM. So I asked him, if he had any opinion on why mainstream media is, getting the hate, the distrust in the U.S.
Yes. Yep.
Would you have an opinion on why your fellow Americans actually mistrust what they call the MSM, and they just rely on other media sources to get to know what's happening?
I don't know the answer to that question. Most of the people I
Yeah.
surround myself with don't really dig into that either. But from what I understand, and it's funny, both of my parents, love them to death, both very smart people, my mother and my father, but they're divorced. But both of them consume media. My mom consumes media on the American conservative side, so Fox News. If I borrow her car when I go back to visit, it's got Fox News on the radio. It's Fox News on television when I go in. It's over and over and over. And my dad is the opposite. My dad is you wonder why they got divorced. So totally separate, like completely. And one of the things is that it's hard to talk to them about anything because they've been so attuned. And what happens is the way I see it, they call it cloistering, I believe, in the psychological term. You're basically trying to say that, like, this is my team, my people. Everybody else outside of it is bad. And so those news organizations, from what I can tell from listening to Fox every time I walk into my mom's house or get into her car, everything is building up an argument, starting a fight. And I'll never forget in my mom's house one time, there was a pamphlet. It was a pamphlet. It was a weird, and it said, how to win the argument against critical race theory. Now, I'm not quite even sure what critical race theory is. I hear about it all the time. I don't know what it is. But my mom had a pamphlet, How to Win Critical Race Theory. What the hell is it so important for her to win an argument about critical. Why does she want to do that? But then I know my dad on the other side, he's always tuned for these arguments. So I'll hang out with my dad. Hey, how's it going? And the next thing you know, it'll go to the news. And then dad is like regurgitating all of these like things that he's heard somewhere. And I'm like, oh, really? Does that sound right to you? Because it doesn't. You said this, and then they get angry. And I think it's because they get angry because I challenged their idea of what they think the truth is, and I pierced something into it by asking a question, and it made them angry, and it becomes frustrating. And that's one of the reasons why I see the examples of it all around me, and I want to stay as far away from it as possible.
You're describing your parents who are the older generation.
I mean, I think one of the problems is, again, that's that 24-hour news cycle. I mean, why does my mom need to watch the news that much? Why does my dad need to watch the news that much? And they fill it all up with these we're good and they're bad, right, cycle. Whereas opposed to, like, my dad tells a story that sounds so wonderful to me. My dad tells a story of growing up, so that'd be like in the 19, whatever that was, like the 50, no. Oh my God, how old was my dad? Anyway, so he's 70 something, right? So yeah. So the 60s, 50s, 60s, growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, and now this is in a time when there were the 3 news channels, right? ABC, CBS, NBC, and it was only on like once or twice a day, right, for a little while. And Dad remembers every, I don't know, Sunday night, a bunch of the neighbors would get together and they would play cards and drink a few beers, and they would talk politics. And my dad remembers hearing the sound of it because it was fun and it was teasing and it was, oh, you think this, ha 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 ha, in the same way that friends kind of just mess with each other, right? And I think the reason why they were able to do that is because they weren't primed for an argument all the time. The idea was in the old days is that they wanted to, just print, the news that they knew to be factual. Instead of priming everyone for an argument, saying that if you believe this way, then you're right. If you believe that way, you're wrong. It's like, well, this is one opinion, or this is one idea. This is another idea. And so therefore they could like have that discussion and have it like with equals, like, oh, this is my opinion and you may have yours and it could be right, but we'll talk about it for a bit. That's an interesting conversation. And those conversations aren't being had anymore.
It's interesting how there are some media companies that are supposed to benefit from riling people up.
Well, that's I think what the 24-hour news cycle is built on. I think I don't think CNN discovered it, but from what I the way I'm told that it happened, the way I've actually read an interview with a former CEO of CNN when Fox News came out, right? Fox News was factually slanted, extremely conservative, right? And CNN at that time, I forgot when that was that the 90s? I can't remember. 2000s, but CNN was still trying to do the old-fashioned, more balanced approach. Well, from what I recall from this article, the board of directors of CNN was saying, "Hey, man, they're killing it over here. Fox is killing it by preaching to the choir." We say in American English, right? It's probably true in Australia. Yes. If you preach to the choir, yeah, man, you're right. Keep speaking, but CNN was trying to balance in the middle and they were losing market share. And so they were trying to force the CEO to then hop to the other side, to go more liberal. And he didn't want to do it. I guess he probably made his money and was like, yeah, screw you guys. You can do what you want to do, but I'm out. And then that's what happened. And it was a good move for CNN from a business perspective. It raised stock. They raised their viewership, and now we have those two organizations that are on different sides, which I think is fundamentally destructive for America, and because of our position of power, fundamentally destructive for the world.
Just one interesting point, Nathan. Fox is ultimately owned by an Australian, right?
It's interesting that you said that. Yes, it's owned by an Australian. So,
I'm curious, Nathan. Fox News gets mentioned a lot by John.
Yes.
I've been to Australia, and it's not like Fox News is dominant over there.
No, it's because it's an American thing. Even though it's owned by an Australian, obviously, I guess it's a business thing, and he's able to set it up in a way that makes a lot of money there. We have our own versions, I guess. The difference between ABC and Sky News, that's kind of our version of the CNN versus Fox type battle, I guess.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he said that we're primed for arguments. And
Yes.
even though I'd like to think of myself as being objective, I can feel myself sometimes even being sucked into it, particularly in the past. This idea of seeing things on news, and it's getting me angry, and I start to feel a bit agitated about the views of other Australians, and it's taken me a little while to go, well, hang on a minute, no, this is ridiculous, you know. If they were not so adversarial, they probably wouldn't be as profitable, and I think that's the problem.
You know, I've wanted to say this. I guess now is the right time to say this. I kind of really admire the culture of being investigative.
Yes, the investigative journalism, yeah.
Not just investigative journalism, but
Mm.
the culture of being able to investigate. Because
Okay, yes, yeah.
you know what's missing in this country? We don't have programs like Sherlock Holmes or detective stories like the ones by Agatha Christie. I think you
Yes.
have those in Australia, right? You have
Yes, we do, yeah.
yeah, because their focus is ferreting out the truth,
Yes.
even
Hmm.
at the cost of going against the police
Yes, yep.
or judges or the witnesses,
Yes.
right? The important thing is finding out the truth. I admire this one story written by Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes,
Yes.
the Hounds of the Baskervilles.
Yes, yep.
I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with the story of Sherlock Holmes and the
Mm.
Hound of the Baskervilles. I kind
Yes.
of it was about a mystical hound
Mm.
that were murdering people in the countryside in somewhere in the UK.
Rural England, yes.
If you were to transpose the story here, you
Hmm.
know, they would hunt for a dog. You know? If you heard about, you know, hounds or, you know, big dogs hunting people down here, and the church said it was that way, and everybody
Hmm.
said it would just be hunting for the biggest dog they could find, and
Yeah.
then they're the killers, yeah, because they
Yeah.
would believe it. But you know,
Mhm.
the very nature of the investigator, right, is to arrive at the truth without bias, right?
Yes. Mm.
Even the investigator could be wrong eventually in their own
That's right.
preconception.
That's exactly right. So even
Yeah,
even the investigator in this case, they have to overcome their own biases.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes
Mm.
had to think of what was keeping him from solving the case because it
Mhm.
was his own bias that was keeping him from investigating the case, and that's what I think is a part of the culture of countries like Australia and the US that's still there right now. It's still that persistence in questioning your own biases, you know, and
Yes.
going against
Yes.
everyone else.
Yes.
You know, in the US, it was the war in Iraq.
Yes. Yep.
They said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Everybody believed it, you know.
Yep.
Even Filipinos believed it.
Yeah. And it
Right?
was the same here. It was the same here. Yeah. And I believed it at the time as well,
Oh,
personally.
okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I thought it was. Yeah. I thought. Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought
you
that was
thought
true.
that, you know, the Iraqis were harboring chemical weapons and
Yep.
nuclear warheads in
Yeah.
trains.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody believed it, even here.
Mm.
You know,
Yep.
we were all for
Hmm.
the invasion.
Yep.
There are people from the UK, the US, I'm not sure in Australia, who question that. You know,
Yes. Yep.
they actually delve deeper,
Yep.
and they no, a lot of it, you know, it wasn't true.
Yep.
And right now, you have information saying that it's not true, and
Yep.
it kind of brings me to the comfort of what truth seekers can do.
Hmm.
In China, people don't know about the Tiananmen massacre because media is heavily controlled in China.
Yeah.
It was the Western organizations who
Broadcast it.
documented what really
Yes.
happened during that time.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's Western organizations who are taking part in obfuscating
Hmm.
many different facts. So I had to ask John what worries he has about this trend that fake news keeps getting spread around.
Hmm.
Can you summarize what makes you worried about the presence of fake news? Any worries you might have?
Absolutely. I think it's obviously very destructive to society. If you've got bad information, right? If you've got bad truth, how can you act responsibly? If you think you have, $1 million in your bank account and you act that way and it ain't true, you're going to be in deep shit. So we need to have that truth. And the problem is that it's 1,000 little mistruths that wrap themselves up, and then a society runs off in a direction, and it can be extremely destructive. The biggest problems with societies that don't have a belief or in free press is because it will only be what the leader wants everyone to believe, and in that situation, they're probably going to be pushing falsehoods, which is why those states usually fail. Is because the entire society is living in freaking fantasy land. I'm very haunted by it was I think 1989, and I know the date only because it was the year I graduated college. Is the year the Berlin Wall fell, which was essentially when the USSR evaporated. Right? It overnight went from becoming one of the two world powers to nothing. And one of the main reasons why is because there was no truth to be had. I study some of these things. For instance, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, right? Information flow was so bad in all levels of society. That was the reason why the Chernobyl meltdown happened. Fascinating to study that as a group of failures, because no one was allowed to admit that they did not have the information they needed, even though they knew they needed. And then all the way up to the point where I can't remember who was the name of the leader at the time, but he's the reason why he knew, the leader of the USSR knew that Chernobyl melted down, was because Sweden told him it happened. He didn't hear about it from his own, because everyone was so programmed with telling lies and falsehoods and covering their own asses instead of being encouraged for telling truth. That the only way he discovered that Chernobyl, that a nuclear reactor in his own country melted down, was because Sweden told him it happened. That's outrageous.
Yeah, I have to interject here. Probably some members of the audience won't be able to recall a lot of it because they're very young. You know how the USSR imploded and the wall between Eastern and Western Germany got demolished in Berlin.
That was in 1989.
Yeah, I hope.
The Berlin Wall came down in 1989.
Yes, I hope the audience, some members of the audience, search for that on the internet. But I think Australia isn't going to fall into any of that because
No.
right, your truth seeking is very strong, and you still have hopes for that it's going to continue.
I think so. I believe it will. Although, lately it sort of feels like it's getting a little bit harder to trust, media sources. You can see these biases there, but on the whole, it's still strong enough to say that it's holding.
Yeah, but it's more like if any misinformation comes out, it's because of the freedom of the people.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe a bit too much freedom.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And the feelings you aired, that there's always that unease that the truth is vulnerable even when it's
Yes.
so. Yeah, I asked John, right?
Given what you've described as non-factual bits are bombarding many in America, you think it's more dangerous now than it was before?
What I'm concerned about is the survival of the dream. There's the dream of a free and open society. If all of a sudden everyone believes things that are not true, that can be a massive problem. But other examples of these things is I actually am I want to be a pilot when I grow up. I think I probably passed that point at this point, but I'm very interested. I study airplane crashes, and one of the reasons why is because so many facts have to be ascertained at any given moment in order to keep a plane safe. And also, one of the things I like about studying them is that whenever a plane crash happens in the U.S., it is investigated thoroughly. They have multiple experts, even small planes. They will examine them and they will come out with a report in order to publish the truth. And the purpose of the report is so that we can all learn from it, learn honestly from the mistakes, whether it's from the mistakes of the pilot, which often happens, or if it was a problem with the aircraft or with procedures that happen in order to keep the people on the plane and on the ground safe. And I find those things fascinating. And a lot of times the beliefs, even the people who built the aircraft, the beliefs that they had ended up being incorrect. They are so focused on safety. By the way, the reason why they are is because, what do they say? You're never safer anywhere than you are on a plane, which is just factually true, right? And that's why, is because the rigorous pursuit of the truth. And the pursuit has a very altruistic, especially in this case, goal of human lives, of safety. And it's a beautiful expression of relentless discovery of truth.
If you're a first-time listener or viewer, tremendous thanks. If you've seen our other episodes before, yes, a short explanation on why each one takes a while to do. We're a very, very small operation. We have our day jobs. But if you've enjoyed yourself so far, then I know we've done a great job. The less interruptions, the better. So on with the program.
Do you have the safety board for?
We do, yeah. We have a similar departments that do the same thing, and yeah, they investigate aircraft accidents. So similar things. So they can go to the manufacturers of these vehicles, aircraft, whatever, and say this is what happened, and this needs to be fixed, or it was pilot error or driver error. So it's there to keep people safe.
There is a capacity in Western culture to overcome your own biases.
Yes.
So, Lance Armstrong was a very celebrated during his heyday.
Mm-hmm.
It was also Americans who pointed out that his victories were tainted because he was eating.
Mm.
The tendency or the willingness to risk personal hazard just to find out the truth. I feel that a lot of people who look toward that ideal will have to look for other sources of inspiration. But I asked John about what his hopes are for the way forward.
Do you have any hopes for what direction the media should take, at least in the future?
And Nathan, I'd love to hear you on this one.
Myself, it's hard to say because I often feel a bit of a sense of despair when I think about how we're kind of the way our societies, in America and Australia, it's becoming when it comes to sort of fake news and things like that. And now that AI is becoming a thing, I think that's making it even harder to determine what truth is. One thing I would say is I think media outlets need to stop thinking so much like a money-making business. I think when they want to keep chasing profits. Yeah, I think it was interesting, John, how you said that there was an era, a kind of a golden age, and I kind of feel a bit the same, that there was a bit more a time in Australia where it wasn't quite so sensationalistic, where or at least you felt that you could trust media outlets more than you do now. Maybe the pursuit of profit could be one of the issues that causes some of those problems.
The pursuit of profit, you're just not going to be able to get rid of it, right?
True. Absolutely true. Yeah.
Well, I hope it's true. I don't know. It's not true. I don't know. I hope we're believing a truth.
Yeah. And let's face it, they're entitled to make a profit. I mean, media is there as a business, and they should be
Yeah.
entitled to pursue that. It's just,
I mean,
mm,
absolutely. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, business owner, and one of the things I like to always say to my employees is, it's very important that we have fun at work, but we both know damn well that when I stop paying your check, we ain't going to be talking every day.
100%.
Reggie, love you, but if I stop, but if because Reggie's works for our company, we stop paying him, I'm probably gonna see him very often. That's fine. We have to. But one of the things that I'm hopeful about is I just saw this. It might have been a headline in the Journal. I'm not sure where it was from. I think it was that it said Americans are getting sick of the politics. They're getting just tired of it, and so they're tuning out. That is what moves things, right? So if we can
Very
get the
true.
news organization, it's exhausting. I mean, I tuned out 20 years ago. So, so I get it. It's exhausting. I do read the news. I read the Wall Street Journal almost every day. I mean, a little bit of it. And for that reason, I really don't get too exhausted of it. The parts of it I do hear whenever I, pop up and look around. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm going back to my little hidey hole, right? Because it's just weird. It's just strange. It's not productive. It's unproductive. It doesn't feel true. It doesn't move the needle for me, right? It doesn't improve my life, and
Absolutely.
so why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And that's one of the things I always try to ask. Why am I doing this, whatever this is? Today, I'm doing this podcast. I think it's an important topic. I think Reggie's great. Does it benefit me financially? No.
Of course not.
But it has a goodness and a truth, and that's why I'm here. And I always try to, with some rigor, examine why am I consuming this? Why am I doing this in any given moment?
Can you tell us, we're non-Americans, do we still believe American media or not? Sorry,
Yeah,
I
I
have
understand.
I know it's really difficult. It's difficult.
It's too broad of a question. Like I said, I decided my trusted source, right? And I do look at other sources as well. Well, actually, it's interesting. One thing that me and my wife enjoy reading is a magazine called The Week. And this is not a paid advertisement, but if they want to send me a check, that's fine. It's called The Week. And one of the reasons why I like The Week is because The Week is a roundup of the news, and their articles, they'll have what happened. And it will say, it'll talk about clerical abuse, right? And it'll say, okay, the accusations, blah, 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 blah. And then it'll say what the opinion articles say. And then it'll say, okay, from the Wall Street Journal, this guy said this about it. From the New York Times, this guy said this about it. And it'll have encapsulated the for and against arguments after it has the what happened section. I like that. That's a really cool thing. So really, whenever what I want to say is, should people trust American media? I mean, there's so many pieces of that sentence we could tear apart, right? You know what I mean? But what is American media? All I just want to say is that why, if we're concerned about trusting it, why are they consuming it at all? Nobody's making you watch that crap. No, it's like people, in America blaming the food system because, do you trust? No, period. It's what are you looking at here? What do you read? And then, we do need to at some point decide who we trust, right? We surround ourselves with fine people like Reggie, and I think Nathan's an amazing guy, people I want to surround myself with. I will now give you guys the benefit of the doubt in almost anything that you say. I will always question it, but I'll at least listen to you, right? But I won't listen to Fox News and I won't listen to CNN. I don't. Neither one of them. Does everything they say is wrong? No. But they haven't earned my trust because they haven't operated with integrity. The Wall Street Journal, New York Times have earned my trust because generally, to my experience, they've operated with integrity. 100% of the time, we all screw up.
Wow.
I think we choose our sources.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. There's a lot of personal responsibility comes in it. But
I had to listen to that portion again right now because for countries like mine, there are some items from American media that we can't help but be aware of. So let me give an example.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Indonesia. Indonesia during the Boxing Day tsunami.
The Boxing Day tsunami.
I think it was the U.S. detectors who first picked up on the tsunami.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for people like us that U.S. media or whatever warnings they issue, we should just cast aside, in favor of our own technology or what we should take direction from.
I guess it
So
depends on the subject and the topic that's being reported as well. Like when it comes to Americans, particularly reporting their own politics, you know, opinions and things that get people riled up, that's sort of something that, most people should ignore. And things from social media probably should ignore. But when there are certain topics that I think bypass that, and when it comes to, things that could be potentially life-threatening, then I think it's probably much more trustworthy then, because people realise how serious an issue it is, and so that's an occasion when people will put aside their biases.
if you're in a country like mine, where you grew up during the time before there was Facebook,
Mm,
you already were aware of manipulation somehow of the news.
yes.
And I confidently can say that even the Chinese are aware of this because
Mm-hmm.
China news is heavily censored. And,
Mm,
I keep saying this. It's just so sad to hear that, that sort of savviness
mm-hmm.
has to be part of media culture in the US and
Mm-hmm.
In Australia as well, or in
Mm-hmm.
a person country. It's so saddening because you didn't have to
Mm.
think about that before in
No,
your situation right now.
no, we
And
didn't.
now you have to become savvy to it in your own circumstances.
Yes.
John said there's some personal responsibility that comes with it, and I
Mm-hmm.
say that I hope that personal responsibility remains easier because the government doesn't have to have a hand in it, right?
Mm.
It's harder if the noise comes from the government.
Yes. We can say that more easily in
Yeah,
our country, where we
yeah,
we
because
definitely have more responsibility to filter those things out, and we're able to do that
yes,
much more
you see,
easily.
yeah, we made an example of it about eating dog.
Yep.
John, can I ask you, do you remember the news outlet saying that people eat dogs?
By the way, that was great. One of my very favorite songs came out of that meme. Okay.
I think I remember it.
Well, there's about 10 great songs out of that one, but there's one guy, I
Yeah.
can't even remember his name. Obviously, look, when you heard that, it was untrue when you heard him say it. It was just a spit out your freaking
I mean, it
Cheerios
became a
moment.
news item somehow. It became a news
Yeah.
item.
It became a news item because it was stupid. If Donald Trump actually believed it, he believed the source that apparently was not credible.
Here's food for thought. This podcast would confirm we have an episode about eating dogs. So
Are we saying?
that's the
Are we saying?
that's the hard
Are we saying?
part about it.
Just in pursuit of rigorous truth, are we saying that 0 people ate dogs in whatever town that was? I can't say that for
So
sure.
yeah.
I mean, that's my point.
Yes,
Is that did someone eat a dog in that town? It was quite possible. Dogs are edible. I don't know. I actually don't even know why I give a shit. That's one of the problems, and I'm sort of like, why is it coming up? What, eating dogs has nothing to do with the running of our country. And if we decide that eating dogs is something that we should do, God, I love my dog. I mean, yeah, and don't make sure your dog's not listening. You're on headphones. No, but I mean, if I don't think that was even the issue. What are we talking about? And that's also part of truth. What are we even talking about? It shouldn't have been talked about. We're talking about running the country. How do we run the country? It would be nice to have truth in the conversation. Truth is a multi-layered thing. One of the things that I think that keeps me from being despondent about it is that I believe everything that is exactly the way it should be. I know that seems really strange. It's sort of like whenever people say like, it wasn't supposed to rain today. Like, no, it was supposed to rain today. If it's raining, you can tell if it was supposed to rain when it's raining, right? Now, what I think the person was trying to say is that the weatherman mispredicted the weather. Now, what I think happens in society, it seems, is that there is a pendulum swing. Things will swing one way
Yes.
and then swing another, right? I mean, we can, just to use American politics, right? We had George W. Bush, right, on one the pendulum, and then it was Obama, and then it was swinging and swinging. And these are the small swings, even they feel big when you're in it. I believe that we are in a pendulum shift to this point. It'll continue. No problem gets fixed until it hits rock bottom.
Yep.
So this is it. This is an important thing. This has to happen. It has to get so bad that people can no longer stand it. Like, I love that little glimmer of that article that I saw where people are just tuning out of the news. Well, that's going to be, when the Fox News guys and the CNN news guys are going like, why is our revenue going down? That's why.
Yeah.
Interesting, right? And that is exciting to see. But it's important to remember it's happening because it's raining, because the conditions were right for rain.
That's
and
right.
That's what happened.
That was absolutely wonderful. I appreciate that you took the time.
All right. Thank you, guys. I
John,
really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope to see you, maybe in the future.
Reach out, Reggie. I love you. Nathan, it was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
When he said that the pendulum swings and this has to happen, I get some apprehension over it. But how about you, Nathan? Do you think?
I think you made an interesting point that sometimes these swings feel really big while you're going through it, and they're not as big. Sort of, I guess, being sucked in a little bit to a lot of this butting of heads between media organisations, and you feel yourself getting angry at the other side and that. But then when you take a step back from it, you sort of think, well, hang on a minute, we're all human beings here. We all
We're
kind of a little bit alike, and we all make mistakes. And you go, well, hang on, I'm going to try and not let myself be influenced like that anymore. Similar to what John's been talking about, you learn to filter it out, and then when you're able to do that, it doesn't feel as bad. I was watching another documentary the other night on the Vietnam War, and just looking at Turning Point, the Vietnam War on Netflix. Highly recommend it. And I look at what was happening there and all the lies that were going on from the American government. President Nixon, and it was just terrible. So, and that was the 1960s. So I can see certain parallels between then and now. And so I think we went through a phase where things were pretty bad back then, and then maybe we stabilised, and now we're going through another period a little bit similar, and then in the future maybe things will change again. And so I understand this notion of the pendulum. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to really stop the pendulum swing, but the more of us the calmer we are about things, the less of a problem it will be for all of us.
You're coming from the standpoint where your culture does have the capacity.
That's true, and I think you
Right?
make a fair point. It is easier for us to do that, so I understand it is different for
That's
you in the
I think
Philippines and in many other countries.
I am absolutely for how Western cultures go against power. It's necessary for everybody to have the capacity to go for the truth.
And I think the more of us tune into podcasts like this, tackling these topics, then the more people will kind of become aware of the issues of our biases and the problems that exist within fake news, and will, I guess, come up with different ways of tackling it.
I'm still hopeful that lots more people would like to see everybody safe, according to what John said. And I tend to agree with that, right? I mean, information is supposed to keep everyone safe.
Yes.
And if the extremists who want to peddle maybe cherry picked information or even down.
Mhm.
They're intending harm, and
Mm.
I think it just goes down to us being safe in our world with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our episode on fake news. Thank you, Nathan.
I can't think of anything to say to sign off, but thanks for having me again, and let's just keep
we'll be
fighting
seeing
the good
you again.
fight.
Yeah. This is Unshocked, and next episode will be. I was hoping to discuss how European is European. So, oh, by the way,
I'm up for anything.
yeah, would you think Australia is European?
No, but we have a lot of European ancestry
Oh yeah,
and
that's exactly
European immigration.
that's exactly
Mm,
how I was thinking of approaching our next episode.
mm.
So yeah, we'll see everyone again, and until next time, prepare to be unshocked.
Okay, so that's episode 9 done and wrapped up. The next one, yeah, it will take some time, but some of you might not have watched our previous episodes, so I do invite you to check them out on our archives. They're available on Spotify and YouTube. And like I said earlier, we really take our time with each episode because we want to make each and every one matter to each and every one of you, your whole lives. So, yeah, I know I'm blowing things up out of proportion again, but if you have enjoyed this episode, then please do give us the highest rating that you can. Thank you in advance for that. That will really go a long way towards encouraging us to make even better content. As for our social media presence, yep, we have day jobs. We're a small effort. It's really difficult for us to cobble together a consistent social media presence. I did mention an email address and a Facebook page and a subreddit in previous episodes, but yeah, for now, I guess it's still better to just leave your comments. Leave your comments on our YouTube videos and our Spotify episodes. So until we really get going with a great social media routine, then comments will do. Thank you once again for tuning in. And till next time, keep being unshocked. Peace out.